Assembled Threads is a community manufacturing hub located in communities where there is long-term and underemployment and disadvantaged communities. This is our pilot hub, and we have recruited and employed 13 candidates from the surrounding suburbs and the Flemington estates. We only had two very simple requirements for the candidate selection: sewing experience and a passion to sew as a job. We find that a lot of community members have a barrier to a lot of workplaces because of lack of English.
I'm from Pakistan and I did course in my country, and also I did certificate 3 here, and I love sewing. I'm very passionate about this. I feel great, this is part of my life.
We have candidates from 9 different countries, none of whom have English as a first language, which means they have to actually communicate with each other in English. And the confidence in both language skill and confidence in the individuals has grown exponentially.
We are all friends now. We discussing together, we working together, sharing the work together, helping each other. It's good to have from different countries and then helping me to develop my language too.
We were like strange at the start, but now we are just like family.
Assembled Threads are providing support for people who are finding it really difficult to break into the market or to get a job. They're supporting people from public housing estates, people from our more vulnerable communities who may have the skills but haven't been able to get a job. The Council is supporting Assembled Threads a number of ways. We're supporting them through the provision of this venue. We're hoping that we can support a number of social enterprises and fledgling businesses to get a kickstart in the municipality.
We were really looking for a progressive partnership with the council. Their question to us was, what do you need? A space, we said, with a lot of natural light. Within days they came back saying, we've got a space, it's a bit quirky, what do you think? And it's brilliant.
Council's overall philosophy is local jobs for local people. I think when you create an opportunity where you build really strong partnerships between local industry, social enterprises, local government, other support services, you create an environment for amazing projects like this to happen.
Homes Glen have been an amazing partnership in this project, and their skills training was fantastic. For us at Assembled Threads, it's really important that we return to that focus on local manufacturing and supporting local artisans within our community. I think one thing that COVID has probably taught us all is that we really do need to look at self-sufficiency for the manufacturing of our products.
I just start working here and I'm learning new skills.
What work actually means for people is more than just getting a job. It's about having a future and having a sense of hope. And so that's about, all of a sudden there are possibilities around a career. It brings hope back to the broader community. The more people that are employed locally, the more people that are able to generate a future for themselves, that brings hope back to their families.
I don't have much, but I am happy to have here to work. I am learning, working. Very good, excellent. I like to start my own business to support my family.
I think this is more exciting place and nice environment. Yeah, I'm really grateful for the community. I really want to be a fashion designer. This is my dream.
Our goal is for this to be the first hub, but the first of many hubs where we can build these magnificent teams of highly skilled individuals, passionate and engaged in what they're doing, and take on the world.
Mama's Kitchen is a program developed by the Moonee Valley City Council to achieve two goals, essentially. Is one, to assist women of predominantly East African heritage to gain experience in commercial cookery, to support them in creating their own entrepreneurial programs or goals, and also feed the community that were affected by the lockdown of the towers in Flemington and Ascot Vale during the COVID period. And we cook, package and then distribute to partners, being Wingate Avenue and the Flemington People's Pantry, and they distribute the food to the community on our behalf. What Mama's Kitchen does for the women is to build confidence in an environment that is unfamiliar.
We have a big opportunity cooking for the community. They work it from the heart, and the people, they benefit from this cooking. They deserve this good food.
I like to work with other women in a team, because I feel like we work as a one. We help each other.
All women are very kind, very helpful. I can learn from them, they can learn from me. We are working as a friends in here. I like to working with other women because they are very helpful. They are very kind, and they are very friendly.
We are providing people with confidence building experience, industry experience, and we're feeding people in need. We're providing solutions for food relief, which has hugely escalated during the COVID period.
Mama's Kitchen is a good learning place for us, because I earn a lot of experience in Mama's Kitchen. Still I am learning. I love Mama's Kitchen.
They're feeding people within their own communities. So they are seeing firsthand the response of what all their hard work and their participation and their contribution is making to the community that they live in. Mama's Kitchen also continues to support the women post the program. So whether that is in food production, business development, or even extending their training.
That's my dream. My dream come true, because I expected I have to, I learned my cooking. Then I said I need a good place to work. Then really I'm happy I got this place, Mama's Kitchen, and I have an opportunity to work here. Really I am happy. I am thanks Mama's Kitchen. They gave this opportunity for me.
My favorite food is the lamb soca, and it's a Somali dish, and it's some yummy and delicious here. I feel so creative that I knew something new, and also something nice to serve my kids. When I came back from work, they say, "Oh, what are we gonna cook now? What are you gonna prepare for us for dinner?" So they're so excited.
We've got women here that started who couldn't look another person in the eye, whose first response would be that they don't speak English. We have these people now being able to communicate, stand up tall, and be really proud of an end product. And we need to extend this experience to many more in the community. And we've been given immense support by the Moonee Valley City Council. The state government have also been hugely supportive. We've had wonderful support partners for the supply of our vehicles. At the moment, we are in a pilot program situations. We've got so many opportunities for growth. We are going to be helping develop their own businesses. We want to keep helping people.
The council keep doing this, helping the community, the ladies working here. We work here, we get a job, and doing from the heart.
More opportunity for moms to get employed in the future, and also to encourage the moms to go and apply for jobs.
From this experience, I can go outside and I can run my own business.
It's very amazing, bring happiness to us, a lot of happiness.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting for the 16th of November 2021, which I now declare open. Although members of the public can't join us in person tonight, our meetings remain open to the public via the live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to all of you who are watching. I would like to take this moment just to say thank you to former Mayor Councillor Cam Nation, who is now joining us in the Council chamber, who I'm sure is ready and roaring to go into debate tonight. I look forward to chairing the meeting. Obviously, councillors, this is my first meeting back in the chair for quite some time, so I'll do my very best to obviously chair and really promote some healthy debate. I will do my best to follow the meeting procedures as well as I possibly can. I've been practicing them, but obviously there's a very big difference between being the councillor and in the chair role, so please bear with me if I need to refer back to my notes at any time. So, before we begin this first meeting, on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the land on which we're meeting, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and we also extend this respect to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here tonight. Now, councillors, I haven't received any apologies for tonight, so we'll move straight on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of minutes. Can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 26th of October and Thursday the 28th of October be confirmed? That's moved Councillor Bedio, seconded Councillor Tyson. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 5 on the agenda is declarations of conflict of interest. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict on any item on the agenda tonight? All silent. Item 6 on the agenda, presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that this week is Trans Awareness Week. Trans Awareness Week is a chance to celebrate the wonderful trans and gender diverse community, and also the perfect ideal time to educate ourselves and those around us about gender diversity and the importance of being a trans ally. And of course, what being an ally even entails. Every year, Trans Awareness Week finishes with the whole community observing Trans Day of Remembrance, which is a chance to celebrate the trailblazers throughout history that have fought for trans rights and honour the ones who've lost their lives due to violence and discrimination. It's important to note that this sort of violence still exists and it isn't just an ugly footnote in history, and that's exactly the reason why Trans Awareness Week is so important. Thanks, Mayor.
Very well spoken. Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do we have any other presentations tonight? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Last night, the Mayor, Councillor Isa, CEO Helen Sway and I attended a presentation by the Essendon SES at Windy Hill. We got to learn about how the team responded to the severe thunderstorms that battered our city at the end of October, which they are still in the process of cleaning up. It was a great opportunity to meet such hard-working and dedicated community volunteers. The SES are true heroes, and it was a great pleasure to present them with some delicious orange cupcakes and a certificate of appreciation. So thanks again to the SES.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. And yes, I will definitely yeah, I think Councillor Adams was giving a clap. I think we can give the SES a clap. I don't know if that's coming through on the live streaming, but we'll go with it. Obviously, yes, as Councillor Bedio said, the SES have done an amazing job, not only for the month of October, but for what they always do for us. And thank you, Councillor Isa and Councillor Bedio, for coming along and giving really great speeches as well. Okay, item 7 on the agenda is petitions and joint letters. Councillors, do we have any petitions or joint letters for tonight? Nope. So item 8 on the agenda is public question time, and we have received 2 questions from the community for tonight's meeting. As we do not have residents in the public gallery tonight, I propose that we move to suspend the provisions in our governance rules requiring questioners to be present in the gallery. That will enable me to read the questions that have been submitted in advance and for the CEO to read the responses. Councillors, may I please have a mover that Council resolves to temporarily suspend the public question provisions in its governance rules to allow questions from the gallery to be read by the Mayor and responses read out by the CEO for this meeting. Moved Councillor Bedio, seconded Councillor Adams. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, the two questions put to Council this evening come from Matthew Galea, and I will read these out word for what has been submitted. Matthew's first question is as follows. How does Council propose to replace the city's only purpose-built full-size synthetic soccer pitch that is set to be relocated as per the Quinn Grove Master Plan? And I'll pass to our CEO, Helen Swee, for a response.
Thank you, Matthew. Through the Mayor, Council has released the draft Queen Grove Precinct Plan for the next stage of community and stakeholder group consultation, and we are very interested in your views. The project commenced in 2018, and extensive consultation was undertaken with the stakeholder groups to develop the draft plan, which proposes relocate Council's sole synthetic soccer pitch to the school grounds. This enables all of the development options proposed in the Queen Grove Precinct Plan. Council is seeking feedback on all elements of the draft plan to ensure it meets the needs and expectations of our community and stakeholder groups. The draft plan includes many elements to support growth in sport and recreation across many activities, and finding the balance across these pressures is an important part of this process. Council is also committed to developing a Soca strategy. This will include an analysis of Soca in Moonee Valley and will guide Council's decision-making and investment for the next 10 years. The advancement of both concurrently, this being the Queen Grove Precinct Plan and the Soca Strategy, puts Council in a good position of making informed decisions for the site and for the sport of Soca. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And we have a second question from Matthew tonight, and that reads, what are the metrics or quantitative evidence that led Council to determine that the city's only purpose-built full-size synthetic soccer pitch should be removed and replaced? Again, I will pass to the CEO, Helen Swee, for a response.
Thank you, Matthew. Through the Mayor, in developing the draft Queen Grove Precinct Plan, the following evidence was considered. Current participation data across the impacted sport plus an analysis of the growth trends. This is a major part of the demand modeling that occurred. 2, supply modeling data that considered participation data plus the current supply of sport infrastructure across the city of Moonee Valley. 3, asset condition auditing data of the infrastructure across the Queen Grove Precinct. This showed that the current soccer pitch was end of life, and in fact, due to its poor condition, cannot be used for soccer competition currently. From the above, officers and the consultants explored opportunities and constraints, plus the qualitative evidence from stakeholders, including Football Victoria, to develop the draft plan. As previously stated, Council is committed to listening to feedback and taking recommendations into consideration to advance the Queen Grove Precinct Plan. We freely admit there may be different or a better outcome that may be possible at this site. It is important that the process is thorough to look at all evidence so Council can make the best long-term decision possible for the people of Moonee Valley. And for other people watching tonight, I encourage you to be part of the consultation for the Queen Grove Precinct Plan. Information can be found at www.usa.mvcc.vic.gov.au/Queen Grove. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO, and thank you very much, Matthew, for your questions. Item 9 on the agenda tonight is reports from delegated committees, and as we don't have any, we will go through to item 10 on the agenda, which is reports. Item 10.1 on the agenda is 46 Garnett Street and Nidri construction of 3 dwellings. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'd like to move an alternative to the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson.
I'd like to move that Council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit in relation to planning permit application number MV/146/2021 at 46 Garnet Street, Niddrie, brackets Lot 68, Block G, on plan of subdivision 003151 for the construction of 3 dwellings in accordance with the following grounds of refusal. 1, the proposal fails to meet the overarching objective and the strategies of clause 15.01-56, neighbourhood character, of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, and would result in a development that fails to appropriately respond and contribute to neighbourhood character. 2, the proposal fails to meet the provision of clause 15.01-5L, neighbourhood character, of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, as it does not respect or contribute to the preferred character of the Garden Suburban 6 Precinct, and fails to appropriately respond to its location and surrounding context. 3, the proposal fails to meet the strategies of clause 16.01-1L, housing growth, of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, as the land is not located within or in proximity of an activity centre or employment corridor that would give strategic support for the density of housing proposed. 4, the proposal fails to satisfy the following standards contained within clause 55, 2 or more dwellings on a lot, of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, and does not achieve an acceptable outcome in terms of the following objectives. A, clause 55.02-1, neighbourhood character. B, clause 55.03-9, access. And C, clause 55.04-6, overlooking. 5, the proposal represents an overdevelopment of the site.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. And just for confirmation, under point 1, you read clause 15.01-5S. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This development has, I think, really conflicted, or maybe I should say divided, a lot of councillors. And obviously, Mayor, you know, being on the consultation meeting, along with Councillor Sypek, I believe you were there as well. There was a lot of anger in the community and along the street of this development. I think this is a street that has a lot of duplex sort of subdivisions where there are 2 on a site. I believe that most of the community have gotten used to such a proposal. To have this application, I think, is quite concerning in the context of the street itself. It's, although just a suburban street to the average eye, it does have a major bus line through it, and residents have really struggled with this over the last decade or decade and a half, and the problem only gets worse with parking in the street. Residents have told me that they've frequently lost side mirrors. I think with the scale of development in this application, something that we will have to end up considering is restricting parking along this street due to the overdevelopment of this application and what will come after it. I'd like to thank, for those who are watching at home who attended the consultation meeting. I, as I said, believe this is an overdevelopment. For the sort of technical language used in my motion, essentially those main 3 points at the end are what the focus of this refusal is in terms of neighbourhood character, access and overlooking. So I hope councillors support this refusal. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Tyson has spelt it out quite correctly. Look, most planning applications that are like 50-50 borderlines would have 1 or 2 things that are contentious, but after getting all the information from both sides and having a look at it myself personally, I've actually walked down the footpath down there and I've stayed there for a while, and parking is a big problem down there, especially when the bus comes through. So it's on a major, you could say it's probably like a major road. For me, there's just too many ifs and buts here, and there's too many things that don't comply with the dress code in my eyes, and I will not be, I will be supporting the alternative.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. It is a tricky one because it's on the one hand it's sort of medium density infill that we sort of encourage where possible to help mitigate urban sprawl. On the other hand, it's 3 units where probably the block could handle 2 units quite well, or would be able to handle 2 units quite well of that size development. So it is a difficult one. There's nothing technically, according to the report, there's nothing technically wrong with this. That's perhaps arguable. So look, I'm not quite sure where I sit on this one, and I'm hoping some other people might speak to the matter. I did note that there are some trees along the boundary that the neighbour is quite concerned about, and just to confirm for that particular neighbour that the trees under condition 9 of the proposed permit, they would be protected. But in speaking to the alternative at the moment, I'm not hoping others might mount an argument either way to persuade me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No? Councillor Tyson, would you like to close?
I don't think there's too much more to add, Mayor. To Councillor Isa's point, that is something that was very salient during the consultation meetings around the tree for a neighbour with sentimental importance for her, and that has been resolved regardless. So I just want to reassure that objector that there's no issue there. Considering there hasn't been any response, I'm looking forward to councillors' support on this, and I think it's really concerning what will happen in the street going forward if this motion isn't passed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Isa, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson. That motion is lost. As this is a planning application and we require a decision, I will put that forward again. 10.1, 46 Garnet Street, Nidgery, construction of 3 dwellings. Do I have a motion? Councillor Bedio.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. And do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nation. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak on this motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll keep it brief. I think the officer's report is quite self-explanatory in the recommendation. The application largely is compliant with Res Code. I don't think it's anywhere out of the ordinary for that locality. I don't believe it represents an overdevelopment of the site, and I also think it fits in with the neighbourhood character. Sorry, I could take my mask off. I don't think it's a blight, or the application would be a blight. I'm assured that there is no significant overlooking, and that the overlooking for the development complies with our planning scheme. And for those reasons, I don't see any legitimate reason for me to refuse the application. So,
thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I concur with Councillor Bedio, and I do appreciate Councillor Tyson and Councillor Sypek's motion and their desire, I guess, to represent some of the 22 objectors that objected to this application. I think with this particular application, we need to be relatively pragmatic. It's over 800 square metres. It's 3 on a block. It's a good diversity of housing, you could argue. They're 4-bedders, so they're not 1 and 2, and that's because of the size of the block. You can have 3 4-bedders. Site coverage is only 53%. The requirement is under 60%. Same permeability and garden area. They're all compliant. And I think if you genuinely look at the refusal that we considered previously, there was only 3 non-compliances with the Res Code. Now, 2 of those were conditioned by the planning officer to make it compliant. And I just cannot see how we in good faith could go to VCAT to support a refusal when there is really only one piece of non-compliance, with neighbourhood character obviously being somewhat subjective. And that's why I couldn't support the refusal. I absolutely acknowledge if you live either side, any development, be it 1, 2 or 3 on a block, is worse than what's there at present. But our job is to assess planning applications based on the information provided to us, and I cannot in good faith not support what the officers put to us here, so happy to support the officers' recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to speak up against this application once again. And the reason why, this sets a precedent throughout the whole municipality. So every person who owns a house is going to be on notice now. You're going to have 3 units with 3 frontages all competing for parking spots out the front of your place. So that means instead of having 2 side-by-sides which could cater for this area, you're going to have 3. And if you had 3, one behind the other, you could park cars off the road. This is going to cause an absolute nightmare. And we are setting a precedent here, Madam Mayor, with 3 fronted units on 1 block of land. I think it's, 25 metres up front. So that basically means 90% of the blocks in Moonee Valley are now open to 3 fronted units. This is the reason why I'm against this. I don't want to set a precedent, but if that happens tonight, well, everyone knows. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Isa, I believe you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to add further to the comments that I just made earlier. Residents had also inquired about whether the arborist's report would be available to them, and I forgot to mention that that we've confirmed that arborist's report is available to any objectors once that's completed, and anyone else who might be interested in seeing that. Also, just commenting on remarks made, look, it probably doesn't trouble me so much with respect to the parking. It provides 6 car spots in tandem on the block, and that meets the requirements of the clause 52, I think it is, of plan scheme. So that's perhaps, I take a slightly different view on that, perhaps to Councillor Sypek's comments. I do think, though, that and I take your point, Councillor Nation, that they are 4-bedroom units, which is both pleasing to see, but does mean that they are quite small 4-bedroom units, squeezing 3 of them onto the block, with only one relatively small sort of living space to accommodate the large family that may be there. So I guess again I would probably rather see 2 townhouses that are perhaps have some better urban design elements on this particular block. And I guess going forward across Nidri, I do take the point, Councillor Sypek's point, that the blocks in the area are all a similar size. If they're going to be redeveloped, this is possibly likely to be the trend. We've had Pearl Street just across from this. It's just, in fact, behind Pearl Street's just behind Garnet Street. So I do take the point that we're likely to see more of these, and perhaps we really need to pay attention to some of the finer elements of the design, particularly even just the colour. You know, I really loved, I know I've mentioned this perhaps closer to a year ago, I'd really love to see us moving away from dark coloured design. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Tyson.
Thanks, Mayor. I obviously won't be supporting this. I think Councillor Bedio said something along the lines of that he doesn't see this report as anything controversial, but the fact that there was a delay and hesitation from councillors in actually moving and maybe reluctantly moving the report probably shows that there is some reluctance to pass this. I think I won't relitigate the points that are made. I do think Councillor Nation's point on the conditions that have been put on do address some of the locals' concerns, but I just think 3 on a block is far too much. And I would probably say we'll have to have a conversation about writing to the Department of Transport at some point to move this bus line, or, as I said, conditioned parking as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No. Councillor Bedio, would you like to close?
Not much to add, Mayor. I'll happily say to Councillor Tyson, there was no reluctance on me to move it. I just wasn't anticipating on moving it, but there was definitely no reluctance for me to support the officer's recommendation. Just on Councillor Sypek's comments in relation to parking, I do understand the apprehension. The application is in full compliance with 5206 of the planning scheme, so it provides the adequate number of car parking for the development. There is also a permit note on the proposed permit to say that no on-street parking permits will be provided to the occupiers of the land. That's generally quite normal for new townhouse developments in the area, given that we as a city are getting to our limits for car parking. But I'm sure that's a problem across metropolitan Melbourne, and that doesn't mean, and for that we can't stop further development. Our city's growing, we need to provide a mixture of housing stock for our city. And unfortunately, or fortunately for the environment, perhaps car ownership is going to have a change, a turnaround, especially in inner city Melbourne. So I acknowledge the views of Councillor Sypek and Councillor Tyson, but I hope that my colleagues can support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson. All those against? It's Councillor Tyson, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Isa and Councillor Byrne. That motion is carried. Item 10.2 on the agenda tonight is Sherbourne Street, Essendon, reinstatement of partial road closure to remove entry from Buckley Street. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a slight alternative that actually captures a lot of the officer's recommendation, but I'll read it in full if that's okay. So the motion reads that Council resolves to A, note the detailed traffic and transport analysis and the significant change in local road conditions following the completion of the Buckley Street level crossing removal project. B, in accordance with the relevant legislation, commence the statutory process to reinstate the partial road closure at Sherbourne Street, in parentheses, to exit only at Buckley Street, close brackets, as follows. 1, consult and receive community and key stakeholder feedback. 2, establish a special committee of council comprising of the Mayor and ward councillors to consider any written submissions received. 3, publish a public notice in a locally available newspaper, in brackets online edition, close brackets, and Council's website advising of the proposed partial road closure and stating that Council will receive submissions. And C, commence the community consultation and engagement process to explore the community's views of a one-way arrangement, in brackets northbound, close brackets, along Sherbourne Street from Inglebray Court to Stanley Street, and from Stanley Street to Buckley Street, and any other associated traffic management and road safety concerns, in brackets e.g. parking, close brackets, and present the findings of this consultation back to Council at an upcoming meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, as I said, a lot of that motion was actually the officer's recommendation. It's just arranged a little bit differently to set out that there's the statutory process, which is around the closure, and then the wider community consultation, or the community consultation about some wider issues, I should say, with respect to the direction of traffic and parking. At the time of constructing the Buckley Street underpass, Sherborne Street was opened to traffic travelling south, as traffic could no longer turn left into Buckley Street from Rose Street. This benefited people wanting to travel towards Mount Road or Moonee Ponds Junction, as it enabled traffic to move through to Park Street. However, it appears, at too great a cost to residents in Sherborne Street. Additional changes to Leslie Street have further complicated impacts on the narrow residential Sherborne Street. From the data provided to councillors, over 1,000 cars per day are using Sherborne to travel south, 70% going all the way through to Park Street. Opening of Sherborne Street to southbound traffic has led to reduced traffic in Leslie and Lorraine Street, between 30 and 60% reduction, and the majority of that transition of the traffic has been to Sherborne Street. Only 25% of the data appears to be school traffic from the data provided, meaning that 75% of traffic is using a narrow street adjacent to a school to rat run through to Park Street, creating an additional problem of increasing traffic in a very narrow one-way lane between Inglebrae Court and Park Street, sharing this space with pedestrians and cyclists where there's no safe footpath. Council's already tested the waters with residents, 200 properties surrounding the area, to see whether there is support for reinstating the closure at Buckley Street heading south, and this was narrowly supported by residents. It obviously brings much greater relief to those, the change would obviously bring much greater relief to those living in the area, and it is understandable that the 1,000 cars who currently daily travel south may want to continue to do this. However, officers and councillors and residents, appear to be in sync here, as we're proposing that potentially the merits of the reinstated closure appear greater than the detriments. Importantly, safety benefits for pedestrians moving from the train line side of the road to the school side, including many school children, will also be improved from the report that officers have presented. Cars speeding through the narrow street and around the bends and down the end laneway are reported by residents on a weekly basis. I know that I'm not the only councillor who's received video footage from concerned residents over the weekend of cars speeding through those narrow streets. The Department of Transport has given in principle support, as the area is still currently under the jurisdiction of the state government. However, they've given in principle support to council commencing this statutory process. And that's all we're doing at this point, which is commencing the statutory process to consider the closure. There are other ways of travelling from Rose Street, including heading back onto Mount Road via the northern exit, or taking one of the options through to Buckley Street using the underpass. And I think the dispersal of traffic is likely to vary across a number of different routes and wouldn't be concentrated in any particular area. So at this point, the motion asks officers to commence the statutory process to reinstate the closure. The process involves consultation. Anyone can make a submission to the panel. We're also taking the opportunity to consult on the other aspects of traffic management in the area, including whether to make different parts of Sherborne Street one way for northbound traffic, and looking at any potential changes to parking. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Isa. I think that's a really great summary of the report, and I do note that, yes, this is the commencement of the statutory process, that all feedback will be taken on board and considered in preparing whatever the options are moving forward. I note that I see there are two compounding issues that Sherborne Street residents have experienced with the change to conditions at Buckley Street. and that is the rat running, but there's also the congestion at school drop-off and pick-up time, and the two do compound each other, but there may be different solutions for the two problems. I think through the consultation process and through understanding people who live in the area, what issues they're facing, we will hopefully, I'm very hopeful, we'll be able to design what's the optimum solution to address those issues. I think that particularly discussing with residents whether a one-way arrangement would work, I have questions about how that will operate and what flow-on impacts it might have, but I think that the consultation process is the ideal way to test those, to understand all of the issues at play, and to work forward to the best outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I flag a small amendment, please?
Certainly.
The amendment would read point B1, consult and receive community feedback from residents located in the area between Sherbourne, Park and Waverley Streets, and key stakeholder feedback, including requesting that impacted schools advise their school community of the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Have you sent that through to the governance team?
No.
Do you mind if you can just email that through to governance? I'm getting a few nods of heads. We just need to make sure we can pop it up on the screen just so all councillors are aware what we'll be discussing.
Sorry.
Councillor Sharp. Councillors, is everyone aware of that wording, or do we want to wait for it to come up onto the screen? You're okay? Everyone's okay? If I get a general...
I'd rather wait.
Wait? Oh, wait? No problems.
I'll do it on my phone, be quicker.
That's okay. For those that are live streaming in, what we're doing now is the motion has been moved, but councillors have the opportunity to move an amendment, which is what Councillor Sharp has done. And because there's some slight changing in the wording that councillors don't have, we just wait until it's on the screen so that everyone has an equal opportunity to be able to debate and everyone knows what we're debating. And also, hopefully you at home watching also know what we're debating. So we'll just wait for that to come through onto the screen and then we'll read it again so everyone's sure of the words.
If you can understand me right. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
It's okay, Councillor Sharp? Councillor Sharp, you almost finished, or would you like me to adjourn? You're okay? All done? Okay. So that's just been sent through to the governance team. We'll just wait so it can go up onto the screen. Should be noted for everyone who's watching at home, this is the councillor's first time back in the chamber since, I'd have to guess probably July. Councillor Nation, you might need to help me out on this one. Late July perhaps. So obviously we have different systems when we're on the computer as opposed to when we're in person. So we'll get 27th of July, thanks Councillor Nation. So obviously putting through these motions, we will definitely iron it out. But we now have it on the screen in front of us for councillors to see. So Councillor Sharp, now it's on the screen, just so we can be really clear, do you mind just rereading that point B1? Thank you.
So, consult and receive community feedback from residents located in the area between Sherbourne, Park and Waverley Streets, and key stakeholder feedback, including requesting that impacted schools advise their school community of the proposal.
Thank you. And the rest as is. So this is an amendment. Everyone's happy. We can see what's on the screen. Everyone's read it. Yes, I will ask for... Oh, sorry, Councillor Tyson, are you struggling?
Point of clarification, Mayor. I think there might have been a comma missing after Sherborne from what Councillor Sharp read out, and also no S on schools, I believe, is what Councillor Sharp read out.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I could see a comment. Comma. There you go. Thank you.
So that's as Councillor Sharp was read out is now on the screen. Is that correct? Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, thank you for that point of clarification. I believe it's correct on the screen. I think we're all on the same page now, councillors, so I will ask for a seconder to that amendment. Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the amendment, please?
I just think that we're very focused around this table on consultation, and I think that we really need to make sure that all the residents down in that neck of the woods are consulted, because obviously any statutory process is an important process and a very large process, which often takes a bit of time to undertake. I also am very keen to see feedback from school communities. So rather than just us consult with the actual school, I think it would be remiss of us to not ensure that we receive feedback from the actual school community. Hence, I have requested that the impacted schools advise their school community of the proposal. So it's all pretty self-explanatory. It's all about getting as much information as we can to ensure that we make the correct decision. This was a massive issue a number of years ago. I don't want it to be another massive issue in a couple of years, and I'd much prefer to have the correct information and adequate information presented to me when the proposal comes back to us, and once the community's been properly informed and properly consulted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think some of us who were on council before, when we had the road under rail debate, know that this is a very engaged community that likes to be consulted. So I think we should leave no one behind in this area, because if we do, they will make sure that they will make themselves known to us if we've left them behind. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this amendment? Councillor Iser.
Thanks, Mayor, and I appreciate the intent of this amendment to, the intent's around consultation, and the point of tonight's motion is to kickstart a process, the core of which is consultation. However, in drawing a boundary that extends from right across to Waverley Street, I think we're missing the point of what impacts there have been in the area and along Sherborne Street. And I'm looking at the map here, and it's always difficult to tell the distances on Google, but it's at least half a kilometre down to Waverley Street. And the point of the closure, the point of the opening of Sherborne Street when the underpass was put in was because people could no longer turn from Rose Street into Buckley Street, and so people have instead used Sherborne Street as the default thoroughfare, and 1,000 cars per day down the street just does not make any safety sense to anyone, particularly school children. Obviously, putting this out for consultation, we need to hear from views to make sure that everyone's whether the logistics can be right, to hear the different views, to make sure that everyone's catered for and we're listening to everyone. That is the case. But I think we do need to be clear about what the purpose of this commencing the statutory process is. And it really is about looking at the impacts that this change caused and working out how we can fix those impacts. And I think that this goes too far in the impacts are felt in a far more concentrated location of the community than this amendment appreciates. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Tyson.
Mayor, I was just wondering, perhaps to Councillor Isa's concerns, that if the amendment were passed to add an additional word.
Councillor Tyson, we've got a live amendment going at the moment, so we can't move.
Well, maybe I was wondering then, to Councillor Isa's point, that if there was the word including after feedback, that might go some way to addressing Councillor Isa's concerns. But that was my only point, and I'll be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sharp, would you like to?
Thank you. Just listening to the points made, at the end of the day, we're the decision makers and we need to hear from everybody that this is going to impact. And it's not, at the moment, the previous consultation went right down to Lock Street. So to go down to Waverley Street is not a huge ask, and it's in this pocket. And as Councillor Sypek mentioned, this was a huge issue a number of years ago. And unless we bring the community on board and make sure everyone in this pocket, or the people that we can notify in this pocket are aware of this change, what will happen is, in a year's time, we'll be back doing the same thing again, maybe changing it again because we haven't heard from all of the community. And also, when, it's just all about, we're here talking about consulting, and that's what I hear about nearly every council meeting of regular times. And I really think it would be remiss of us to exclude anybody at this very important juncture that we're about to undertake, which is commencing a statutory process, which is a big process. And at the end of the day, whatever we do to Sherbourne Street will flow on to the Lorraines, to the courts, to the, I've gone blank on the streets, but all the other streets down further, they will be impacted. I've seen it, I've lived it through the Dublin Avenue experience along Buller Road, and we still get requests 7 years after closing Buller Road to reopen Buller Road and or to close all the other streets along Buller Road. We haven't gone down that track yet, but it will rear its ugly head probably year on year because of the impact that a road closure has, particularly the flow-on effects. So the more we consult, the more feedback we get will only be beneficial to us as councillors, as we're the ones making the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. So, councillors, I'm just going to put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Byrne. All those against? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. That amendment is passed. We will go back to the substantive. Now, Councillor Isa, Councillor Hodgson have spoken. Councillor Sharp, you were just about to speak. Would you like to speak on the substantive?
Not really. All I would say is I'm happy to go out and consult with the community thoroughly and look forward to the feedback and see where this process goes. Thank
you, Councillor Sharp. Would anyone else like to speak on this motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief. I was introduced to the residents of Sherbourne Street fairly early on in my councillor term last year, and they are a very active community, but rightly so. What they've experienced since the level crossing removal of Buckley Street is intense, really. The use of those roads, and if anyone's been down Sherbourne Street, you'd be surprised to learn it's a two-way road. It's quite thin, but the level of traffic that caused from schools and rat running is extreme for such a small street. We've heard some pretty horror stories of kids nearly getting run over, of people nearly getting sideswiped. I think there is a real danger here, but also a real impact to amenity. I'm really happy that we got this motion moving forward and that we can support the residents who have done it pretty tough. I reckon they probably copped the brunt of the LXRA from Buckley Street. So happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sypek.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. In all planning applications, I've never in my life had anyone come to me and say, why was I consulted on this? I shouldn't have been consulted on this. All I've ever got was, why wasn't I consulted on this? No matter how far away or how close you are, that's always been the comment. Why didn't I get a letter? Why wasn't I consulted? I knew nothing about this. So the more consultation, the more area we can cover, the better it is. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor? No. Councillor Sharp, would you like, as a mover of an amendment, would you like to close? Councillor Reiser, as a mover of the substantive.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, anyone is welcome to make a submission. I could make a submission to this particular process. Anyone across the municipality can make a submission. The questioner was around who we mandate the process, the legislative process, which is under the Local Government Act and the Road Management Act of 2004. The question was who we consult under that legislative process. And to extend a boundary out for this right the way to Waverley Street, I think it's insulting. It's insulting to the people of Sherbourne Street that their amenity has been so impacted by this change that was to accommodate the LXRA changes to Buckley Street, which were controversial. That was what was controversial. And the amenity impact, 1,000 cars a day down this street, AM and PM chaos at pick-up and drop-off for the kids, cars pulling into driveways and then arguing with the residents that they have an entitlement to drop off kids from the driveway because of the chaos that has been caused. And to think that consulting all the way down to Waverley Street is appropriate for this just makes a mockery of what consultation is. I've sat in VCAT and had my objections to something questioned because I lived more than 400 metres from something. And people were arguing that I ought to be struck off the objector list. I think the consultation under this legislation is about the people who are most impacted, and they are not. I'm really sorry for my residents who live in Scott Street and Robb Street, but this issue is not about the residents who live so far away. And I think it's a real to argue the point that consultation is that somehow acknowledging the importance of this to Sherbourne Street is somehow undermining consultation.
Councillor Reiser, time.
Is
Thank you.
really quite offensive.
Thank you, Councillor Reiser. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.3 on the agenda is Grant Program for Properties in Heritage Overlay Areas. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move the officer's recommendation, please.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Adams. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thanks very much, Mayor. Look, I'm really pleased to be supporting this one. I think this report really outlines options that we have for continuing to protect our heritage. Noting that, not long ago we all voted to add a significant number of properties, add a heritage overlay to a significant number of properties in Moonee Valley. I think as a council we have a responsibility to protect heritage, and I know that that's something that's very important to our residents. We really appreciate and acknowledge the significance of our heritage properties. But it's often not a popular thing for the property owners that have a heritage overlay put on their property, because it does give additional responsibilities for them to maintain that heritage value. And restoration can be expensive. So this report talks about some of the options that we might consider to support our residents in managing that responsibility to protect the heritage on behalf of the whole community. The option that is explored and recommended as for further exploration by officers is consideration of a heritage grant program. And the recommendation here from officers is to consider establishing a reserve for that program in the next budget process and to request a report with a bit more information on how that grant program might operate. So I note that tonight's decision is not to actually put in place a grant program, but it's to get a bit more information on how that might work. And I really think, the report does highlight how heritage should be, we hope that people will see heritage as an asset rather than a burden. But it is, outside of the means of some of our residents who have a heritage overlay to be able to maintain that heritage. And I think that it's I think it's the responsibility of council on behalf of the community to support residents in that situation. I think the grant program really offers a chance to enable that. Particularly, I have concerns around what's referred to as demolition by neglect, and I note that it is touched on in the report that demolition by neglect is an issue that other councils have faced and that potentially we do face in Moonee Valley. And I note that a notice of motion was put to this council back in 2020 requesting a report back to council outlining how council can address the issue of demolition by neglect of heritage properties, including a model law that was produced by National Trust and considering that as a change to our local laws. So we do expect that report to come back in the next few months, I believe, to council. And that I think you would characterise as the stick, but I think that you can't really implement a stick without also offering a bit of a carrot. So I think that the two things might go hand in hand, and I'm glad that we are progressing the idea of a grant program to support residents alongside, managing the risk that allowing people to let properties fall into such disrepair that they are under threat of being identified as demolition by neglect it's a threat to our heritage, and I'm really glad to see steps being taken to try and mitigate that.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. We're so lucky in Moonee Valley to have such a rich history and heritage, but maintaining these contributory or individually significant buildings in heritage overlay areas can be really expensive, and although some of these properties are of great value today, owners may not necessarily have the cash flow or means to fund works to maintain these properties. Noting also that many homeowners who purchased their homes prior to them being identified within a heritage overlay are now facing extra costs and requirements that they may have not factored in when initially purchasing their properties. I found it an interesting read to see what other councils are doing in this space, and I'm looking forward to reading the findings of the further investigation that will be undertaken to establish a heritage maintenance and restoration grant program. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak on this? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. And look, I will speak in support of the sentiment here, and I obviously was on council back in October 2017 when the notice of motion came through council, supported it in regards to pursuing a heritage grant scheme. However, 4 years on, we're living in a different world, and I think back to our budget negotiations. So this obviously references a potential heritage grant scheme in the 2022-23 budget. I think back to our 21-22 budget negotiations, or discussions I should say, where we were scrambling to find $50,000 for library books. We cut $450,000 from our community grants. It went from $900,000 to $450,000 this year. So that's halving it, $450,000. We can't even fund our Mama's Kitchen program, right? And so I just think it's probably just slightly irresponsible that we are going or looking to establish a heritage grant scheme where homeowners who they might have limited cash flow, Councillor Adams, but they have significant equity in expensive properties. I did a little look on realestate.com today. The 6 suburbs where we have the most heritage properties. Flemington, median, 1.25 million. Ascot Vale, 1.26 million. Moonee Ponds, 1.48 million. Strathmore, 1.5 million. Essendon, 1.66 million. Travancore, 1.7 million. So can I support a scheme and go out and tell our members of the community that we're potentially creating a heritage grant scheme where we are going to help people who have equity? They might have cash flow, but they've got equity, or they've got enough of a cash flow that they manage to get a loan to get equity in properties that are of over $1 million value. I just don't think it's council's position right now in 2021 to be assisting these people to renovate their properties, as nice as they may be, and as important they may be to our city. I just don't think we can turn around and say to residents, we're stripping $450,000 out of the community grant scheme in 2021, but we are going to assist homeowners who have equity in properties upwards of $2 million that we're going to help you do some renovations to your heritage property. I just think it's tone deaf at this time, particularly coming out of a pandemic, particularly when later on in the meeting we're only going to give, potentially, without preempting, a pittance of money to businesses that are struggling in COVID. So I just cannot support the motion which has this heritage grant scheme.
Just a point of clarification, Mayor, to Councillor Nation. In your research, did you by any chance have a look at Avondale Heights, East Keilor Airport West? Have they cracked the $1 million mark?
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. I'm assuming that was through me. Councillor Nation, you said that you used.
So I just looked at I looked at the suburbs which have on our heritage register, the suburbs which are most represented. Now, sadly, East Keilor and Avondale Heights have a low number of heritage listed properties, so I didn't look at those. But I
thank you. I think that answers the point of clarification that it wasn't looked into, Councillor Sypek.
Shame.
Now, thank you, Councillor Nation, for that. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Here, Councillor Nation. I've got a few things I've written down here, and I use the word sentiment too, because obviously the sentiment and intention of this report is obviously grounded in good faith, and we all want to protect our heritage. That's certainly a big thing. Within Moonee Valley, we have a number of beautiful heritage homes, there's no doubt about that. But I must state that the report is based on a meeting from October 2017. Now, only 4 of us around this table were here in October 2017, and when the wording is conservation of extremely rare or unique properties of potential heritage significance, with a point to investigate the potential to introduce a heritage grants program offering funding for restorative works to properties of historical significance. Now, from my memory and understanding of this resolution, the aim was to focus on our extremely rare or unique properties that exist in Moonee Valley, and there are a number of them, but there's certainly not thousands of them. However, this report states that the grant program would apply to thousands of property that are covered by heritage overlay. So I don't believe that was actually the intent of the original motion. However, the report here is before us. But I personally certainly cannot support a grant fund established from ratepayers' funds that enable owners of heritage buildings to be able to use council coffers to fix or repair their houses. Now, there are many areas within our municipality that probably don't even have any houses under heritage overlay, which I think is what Councillor Sypek was just requesting confirmation of from Councillor Nation. But I would certainly think that these ratepayers would be concerned about the use of their rates. Now, I live in Essendon amongst many heritage listed houses. My house does not have a heritage overlay, so I do not have a conflict in this item. but I appreciate and adore the many heritage houses that surround me. However, personally, I would not want to see my precious ratepayer funds used in a way which directly benefits the owners of these heritage houses. And council, at the end of the day, council doesn't print money nor have a money tree out the back, and I would suggest that we could make much better use of council funds. And personally, I think we can do much better with heritage in the way of using stronger heritage overlays and even through our local laws process. Certainly not a grant scheme, and certainly not in these times that we're in now. So I won't be supporting this motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Tyson.
Thanks, Mayor. As I'm sure Councillor Isa will point out, this motion notes the findings, considers, requests to further investigate and develop. So there's nothing binding on council in this. We have to go through our budget process. I think in some respects, Councillor Nation and Councillor Sharp's remarks are too cute by half on that, and I think this doesn't do anything really except consider in 6 months. As Councillor Sypek pointed out, we don't have many heritage homes in our ward, Mayor, as you know. I don't own a property. I rent in Moonee Valley, but I can see the value in this. I think when we go through the budget process, if we were to go ahead with this, I would like to see some sort of means testing on it, so that, as pointed out, people who are asset rich but potentially are struggling, I wouldn't want to see seniors, pensioners having to be kicked out of their homes because they can't afford these necessary works. So I think means testing on income and savings or something like that would be helpful for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other, I think Councillor Isa, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, we've ventured into some interesting discussions around priorities of expenditure of council rates. It's very seems very judgmental and value laden, which is sometimes the debates we get into around budget time. But at the moment, this is just about looking for some more information to see whether this might be something that we might consider. And it may well be that a report can come back that says, well, if we're going to do this, it really should be means tested to make sure that equitable conditions are taken into account. Just in April of this year, on the 27th of April of this year, we wrote to 2,519 affected property owners and told them that their homes were being affected and listed with a heritage overlay. And that was that new information for them came about having potentially years after them having purchased their properties. We know that heritage initiates a whole lot of planning hurdles, planning costs, planning expectations. You've got to pay at Moonee Valley $150 to get advice for a 15-minute consultation from our heritage advisor on what colour you're allowed to paint your fence, or on whether you should have to replace your windows. We ask a lot of people in heritage overlays, and not everybody has disposable cash to be able to afford that. Certainly some do, but those who don't, I think it's absolutely appropriate that we look into, explore, investigate ways in which council might be able to assist, because it's the property's maintenance that helps then ensure that they are retained and maintained for the beautification and benefit of the municipality. I also just need to point out that, of course, the community grants were higher during COVID. That was the whole point. The community grants were COVID targeted grants. So we've pulled that back in 21-22 appropriately because we're no longer dealing with some of those immediate pressures. With respect to Mama's Kitchen, it's been a state-funded program. It's not something that has come out of council's coffers. So just to correct a few things there. I fully support exploring and considering and requesting and engaging with and developing and getting more information to understand how we might be able to help protect heritage homes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for an interesting debate. I too, I guess, struggle with this one a little bit because I tend to agree with the sentiment as discussed by Councillor Nation and Councillor Sharp. I would definitely not be inclined to hand someone a $50,000 grant to build a new living room in their heritage home, or to extend a home when they have sufficient equity, or perhaps even if they bought a home knowing it was a heritage home that was in a state of disrepair. My concerns and where I'm keen to see explored is for the properties, as Councillor Isa discussed, who weren't under a heritage overlay, who then fell under a heritage overlay. But that being said, I wouldn't want us to be seen to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars to help people improve their assets. What I'd be keen to see is whether we could potentially put that money towards waiving costs for pre-application meetings with our heritage advisor for those who we've slapped a heritage label on their house or a heritage overlay, or perhaps even spend that money so our heritage advisor doesn't only work one day a week, and so there's greater access for those who need heritage advice. Perhaps that's a better way to spend the money. But I'm happy to support this motion, not because I agree that we should be giving people who are asset loaded or even cash loaded funds to renovate their house, but I think there might be ways that officers can find an equitable solution so that we keep our neighbourhood character intact. We can improve on our neighbourhood character and support those who might not necessarily have signed up for a heritage home, but now have to deal with the heritage requirements of planning. So I'm keen to see what officers come up with if this gets passed, but I do tend to agree with Councillor Nation's notion on this issue. So, yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek, I've got you as the only one who hasn't had a chance to speak. Did you want to speak on this motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will speak on this. It's all well and good to have a heritage overlay and support people with heritages, but up at my neck of the woods, we have what they call an airport overlay, which means you've got to have double glazing. Now, what about people who have to pay for that extra cost? What about them, Madam Mayor? We just forget about them. And I can tell you, I live in East Keilor just like you, and it'd be nice to know where everyone else lives who supports this heritage overlay, because I certainly don't live in a heritage property. I don't live in an overlay, and I think if we're going to have a heritage...
Councillor Sypek, I don't know where you're leading to this, but we're not going to go through where everybody lives, if that's where you're... Okay. Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Continue.
If we're going to have a super fund for heritage overlay, well, I'll tell you what, at the next council meeting, I'm going to have a super fund for the airport overlay, so we can support people who have to put double glazing in their houses to suppress the noise of jets coming. And jets are coming back, Madam Mayor. They're flying again. So there's going to be some double glazing funding there as well too at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek.
Can I please ask a point of clarification through the CEO?
Surely.
CEO, there's been reference in discussion. I'm asking a point of clarification in regards to the report. There's been multiple references within the discussion that the officer's recommendation before us is solely just to investigate the potential for heritage grants. Yet, this is responding to in 1.1 of the report, this is responding to a resolution that was to investigate the potential to introduce a heritage grants program offering funding, loan or a rates rebate scheme for restorative works to properties of heritage significance. So CEO, or through you, would this officer's recommendation therefore be the next step in the process rather than just investigating? And if this motion was passed, would that reserve be a default within the budget before budget discussions commence?
Thank you, Councillor Nation. CEO?
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Through the Mayor. Sorry, I need to change my glasses first so I can read. In reading the officer's recommendation, my understanding is this recommendation is purely to consider as part of the 2022-23 budget development, is not a pre-approval. So if councillors collectively pass this tonight, my take of this, we are obliged to consider, not necessarily to establish this fund. Because number C also says to further investigate. So it's not about making decision about establishing that reserve, is making decision to oblige council to consider that as part of budgeting process rather than pre-decided budget.
So, sorry, a further point of clarification, if I may, through the CEO. Obviously, nothing is predetermined in the budget. So, I guess my question is, if councillors are sitting down in the first budget negotiations for 2022-23, based on this resolution being passed, would a councillor have to bring this as an idea to the budget negotiations, or would it already be, I guess, an item that officers would recommend based on the resolution passing?
I would think is the latter, depending on how point C goes.
Thank you. Thank you, CEO.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So we need to bring this up as a discussion to fulfill this this resolution if council resolved tonight. Itself is not a fund allocation.
No, of course, yes.
Is obliged to consider.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Nation, does that answer your point of clarification?
Sorry, can I ask a point of clarification? Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Isa.
CEO, could I just clarify the final comments made just then? Because am I understanding correctly that you said that it wouldn't be in the budget, the default position in the budget would depend on the outcomes of point C, and point C3 says bringing a report back to council on the findings of the further investigation. So am I understanding it correctly that a report would need to come back to council on those investigations before it would be considered as part of the budget development? Is that the correct understanding?
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Susan May. Correct. The only issue I see here, the point C doesn't have a time frame. Point B would have a time constraint.
Thank you, councillors. The CEO is just responding to the point of clarification. Councillor Isa, did that respond to your point of clarification?
Does point C need a time frame, if I could ask that to the CEO? Is that a question allowed?
No, Councillor Isa, this is the officer's report as it is. It's the officer's recommendation, which does not include a time frame. So the motion has been moved as is. So now, as we have had Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Nation, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp and Councillor Tyson have all spoken on this motion, and there's been numerous points of clarification as well. I will now move back to...
Before you do...
No, I won't. What will I do? What are we doing, Councillor Isa?
Could I move an amendment to point C3?
Councillor Isa, what is your amendment?
Could I move an amendment to bring a report back to council on the findings of the further investigation by 31st of March 2022?
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I'm mindful that hasn't been sent through, but it's fairly short. Can I just get a general nod from councillors if everyone is clear on that amendment? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Isa, can you just repeat those words? It was...
I can send it through to governance as well if needed.
It's being sent through.
So it's adding...
It's already
Thanks.
up.
Yeah.
So Councillor Sypek, the bit's added in yellow. So by 31st of March 2022. Councillor Isa, can I just confirm on the screen is what is correct?
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillors, have everyone seen the amendment? Thank you. Councillor Isa, do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Look, I take the point raised by Councillor Nation, and if that clarity helps to set out what my understanding of the motion is, which is that a report's got... my understanding of the motion was that a report would come back to Council so that we could consider whether this might work, what it might entail, before there being any thought to including that in the budget. So that's been my understanding of the motion. If this helps to clarify that, then I hope that does sort out some of those questions earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Tyson, on the amendment? No. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. And just thinking out loud, so point B, on the screen it's actually incorrect. It should be A, B and C. There's a missing point A there. But on the... A's note the report. That's all right. It's, so in the motion, and I know we're just speaking to the specific amendment, but obviously the date relates to the earlier points. Well, I guess that is my question really, because point B, consider the establishment of a funding reserve for a heritage grant program as part of the 2022-23 budget development. Now, the way I read that, that's separate to point C. So if point C is going to bring the report back on the 31st of March, point B in the original motion would still put the grant program as default into the budget. We know we're probably starting budget negotiations, I don't know, December probably, CEO. I won't ask a specific point of clarification through you, but traditionally it's done in November and December. So I would still think, regardless of that date being added through this amendment, that would bring the report back by the 31st of March. Prior to that, we will have commenced the first, maybe second, maybe third of our budget workshops. And in the motion, point B gives enough of, if passed, gives enough guidance to officers that in those initial few budget workshops we have in December, January, Feb, that Heritage Grant program would be in there or as part of those discussions. So I see part C as being separate to Part B because they're two different pieces. So appreciate the report coming back by 31st of March, but I still think point B gives enough guidance that officers would have that grant program in there as a default. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, I concur wholeheartedly with Councillor Nation, and also I'm not sure...
Councillor Isa and Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Sharp speaking. Thanks.
I'm not sure if anyone around this table has had any dealings with National Trust of Victoria, but they don't work in exactly in the fastest terms. So by putting a date of the 31st of March, I think we'll be defeating the whole purpose anyway, because we're coming into December, Christmas season, just out of COVID. I doubt, from my experiences with the National Trust, I doubt that we would have anything like a draft proposed terms of agreement by the 31st of March, considering we'd have to probably get that in by the mid of February to enable a report to be here in the chambers by the 31st of March. So I think that date is not, doesn't effectively mean a thing. We haven't looked into whether it can even be achieved, and I doubt it can be. So I don't see any point in that alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would anyone else like to speak on this alternative? Yes. Amendment, apologies.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And once again, this is like giving someone the PIN numbers to the Moonee Valley credit card so they can go to the ATM.
Councillor Sypek, I'm just mindful we're just speaking now on the extra words that are in the yellow.
Yeah, I'm speaking on them.
Okay.
Yeah. And they'll get it by that date. How's that? Simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would anybody else like to speak on this amendment? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to note that at Part B it actually says consider the establishment. Thanks.
So we're just speaking on the amendment, Councillor Adams, but thank you. Anyone else for the amendment? No? Okay, so I will just be putting... Councillor Isa, would you like to close on the amendment?
Yeah, I'm glad some people are amused by this because, look, it's really not that funny for people who... Look, I went and did a lot of door knocking prior to April, the April vote, where we were putting a lot of homes into heritage, and I went to front up to people just to explain to them what we were doing and why, and assure them that it wouldn't impose too many costs on them.
Councillor Isa, this is just the closing on the amendment.
Councillor Sypek has referred to some outlandishly exaggerated statement around this being opening up the coffers to the whole of Moonee Valley.
Point of clarification is giving the PIN numbers to the credit committee on the credit cards so they can access the ATM.
Councillor Sypek, I don't believe that was a clarification. Okay.
Thanks, Councillor
Councillors,
Sypek.
if we can just keep back on track, please, where Councillor Isa is speaking in regards to the amendment that's come through. So we can just continue.
Okay, Mayor, I think the putting forward this date was an effort to try to resolve the issues that other councillors had put forward. As always, I try to put forward amendments that help to improve motions and to help deal with problems that and concerns people might have, and that's the intent of putting the date in here to address the concerns raised by Councillor Sypek. Thank you. Councillor Nation, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. So I'm going to put to the vote just the amendment. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Byrne. All those against? That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek. The amendment is carried. Now we're up to closing statements on the substantive. As we have an amendment that has passed, Councillor Isa, would you like to speak on the closing of the substantive as a carryover an amendment?
While this provision still exists in the governance rules, I will make small use of it. Thank you, Mayor. Just to say a couple of things. It was referred to, a comment was made earlier around whether councillors do or don't live in heritage properties. I can only speak for myself. I do live in a property in a heritage overlay, and I sought governance advice as to whether I had a conflict of interest with this particular matter, and the exemption clause under the Local Government Act refers to where if you have an interest in common with a significant number of people in the municipality, then it's not considered to be a conflict of interest. I'm not imagining that I would make use of such reserve, and that's why I think a means-tested approach would be the best approach for this particular sort of grant process. The intention, I would imagine, for this is to help people undertake it. You know, it cost us $20,000 to repair our windows, so that our front windows of our property, so that they maintained their heritage integrity. I'm not expecting that many people, everyone in the municipality has $20,000 to spend on their front windows. And I was very fortunate to be in the situation where I could spend the bulk of my council salary on the front windows of our property in order to maintain its heritage facade. Heritage is valuable for the municipality. It is a cost for property owners. We've imposed heritage overlay on commercial properties, on homes, on business owners, on people who have to now comply with paint colours, with particular materials. They have onerous permit application processes, and in setting up a fund that we could appropriately target towards people who really needed it, we would be doing we would be maintaining the, as I say, the beautification and the heritage of our municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, a lot's been said in this debate. I just wanted to respond to a few of the comments. we may not have been in the room back in 2000. There are 5 councillors who weren't in the room back in 2017 when the original notice of motion was put, but we were there on the 27th of April of this year when we did add a heritage overlay to a significant number of properties and moved a very similar motion to investigate a grant scheme like this, or anything really, to assist those property owners who now live under a heritage overlay. I think Councillor Nation has pointed to the fact that a lot has changed in the last couple of years, and that's true also of people living in heritage properties. As Councillor Adams has pointed out, sometimes, you know, cash flow doesn't necessarily correspond directly with people's assets, and I think, you know, as Councillor Tyson also mentioned, as we've all had our 2 cents worth on this one, there are properties that exist with a heritage overlay, possibly recently added, that families may have been living in that property for several decades, and I would note that $1 million properties today, only 30 years ago, might have been worth a few $100,000. So I think it's not necessarily a blanket statement that we could make that people living in heritage homes will have the means to be able to protect those. And if we consider heritage as a community asset, which I do, then I think that we have a responsibility to assist those people, and I fully support eligibility criteria that meets that sentiment that you know, Councillors Nation and Sharp have indicated that they agree with, that sentiment that our heritage is worth protecting. I understand that budget processes...
One for the time.
Can I get 30 seconds extension?
15
seconds, thanks. I understand that budget discussions will be, and also when the report comes back, there will be further discussion about whether this is a viable option for Moonee Valley.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. All those against? That is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Byrne. That motion is carried. Okay. Item 10.4 on the agenda is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp. Thank you. That's not what the item is, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp. I'll read what the item is. Item 10.4 is response to petition Solar Our Sports. Councillors, do I have a motion?
You do, but I'll just wait till other councillors have stopped talking. Thanks.
Thanks, councillors. If we can just make sure we're back in the chamber. I know it's obviously different than when we were when we've been on Zoom, but if we can just make sure that whoever has the floor at the time has the everyone's attention would be great. Councillor Isa, were you about to move something?
I was, Mayor. I'd just like to move an alternative motion, if that's okay. I'll read it out.
Yes, please.
That Council resolves to A, advise the petition organiser that Council has committed to supporting the community. Sorry, I'm just going to start again. I'm sorry, Mayor. That Council resolves to A, advise the petition organiser that Council has committed to supporting the community reduction. There's a word. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Isa. That's okay.
I can't. The glasses and mask don't work, and my eyes.
Everyone's getting used to the new system. That's okay. We've got time. Do you want to start again? Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Isa.
That Council resolve.
Councillor Isa.
That Council resolves to A, advise the petition organiser that Council has committed to supporting the community reduce greenhouse emissions through the allocation of $250,000 to a community climate emissions reduction reserve in Council's 2021-22 budget. B, consult with the tenants of the 17 buildings, that are not on Council's electricity contract, suitable for solar PV systems, to obtain consent for potential solar PV installation on the building, by 31st of January 2022. Sorry, I probably should say the 17 council community buildings.
Councillor Isaac, can you just read point B again, please?
Sorry, Mayor. Consult with the tenants of the 17 council buildings. Thank you. That are not on council's electricity contract suitable for solar PV systems to obtain consent for potential solar PV installation on the building by 31st of January 2022. So there's a comma after by. I'm sorry, I should have read that because it's quite an important comma. After building, before by. Sorry. I'm actually a bit hot in here. I'm feeling a bit faint. Can I just request that we
adjourn? Yep, I'm happy to adjourn the meeting if we've got someone feeling a little bit not that well. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes and we'll come back at 8:15. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I'll start again. I didn't have my mic on. I was just saying thank you for everyone for being understanding of the adjournment, councillors, exec officers, and obviously people who are online. It's obviously very hard to tell what's necessarily going on in a council meeting, but here we've obviously just come back into the chamber and we're just working on the air conditioning slightly, and we've just probably overheated. You may have seen our CEO walking around giving everyone water right before the moment where we basically had to call it quits. So hopefully we're back on, we're happy, we're hydrated, and we're ready for some more healthy debate. Now, we were up to 10.4, which was the response to petition Solar Our Sports. What we'll do is we'll start the motion again. So I will call for it. Do we have, councillors, do we have a motion on 10.4, response to petition Solar Our Sports? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternative to the officer's recommendation, which I'll read in full.
Thank you.
That Council resolves to A, advise the petition organiser that Council has committed to supporting the community reduce greenhouse emissions through the allocation of $250,000 to a community climate emissions reduction reserve in Council's 2021-22 budget. B, consult with the tenants of the 17 council buildings that are not on Council's electricity contract suitable for solar PV systems to obtain consent for potential solar PV installation on the building by 31st January 2022. C, subsequent to the consent of the relevant tenants, proceed with structural and capability audits of the suitability of the buildings for rooftop solar PV, funded through the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve up to $50,000. And D, consider a report on the council-owned buildings suitable for structural assessment that are not on Council's electricity contract by 31st March 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak on that motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I just wanted to thank again the petition organiser and signatories, if that's how you say it, for their petition and the work and research that went on behind it. As the officer's recommendation outlined, there is an allocation sitting a reserve sitting unallocated of $250,000, which we do hope to spend before the end of the financial year. When that reserve was established, it was designed to be able to sit there so that we can allocate based on a report that we're expecting on how we can support the community to reduce greenhouse emissions. Now, noting that we don't have the results of that report yet, but noting that we are heading towards the end of the halfway point of the financial year, we want to make sure that we're in a really strong position to be able to allocate and spend that $250,000 budget. The expectation is that solar panels on roofs is a good approach for reducing community emissions. And we did receive a report a while back at Council about a number of council buildings that might be suitable for solar panels on the roofs. And there were 17 that were identified as being leased out to community groups. So they're things like our tennis clubs, some of our bowls clubs, things like that. 17 buildings that the lessees actually organise the power contracts, not council. So they don't sit on council's electricity contract, which is a carbon neutral contract. And we just wanted to do some preparatory work to make sure that when we get the report back, if solar panels are recommended, then we're ready to start rolling out. I think it's a really good use of of some of our climate emission reduction reserve to try and get ourselves ready, because I wouldn't want to see us run out of time at the end of the financial year to allocate those funds.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hodgson, for moving the motion. And also thanks to the petitioners who worked really hard to bring this to Council to encourage us to make use of the roofs of community pavilions, community buildings and pavilions to generate clean solar energy. And we do know that rooftop solar is a highly effective way of reducing carbon emissions, whether there's emissions are classified as council or community, there are emissions that we can play a role at council in reducing. The arguments that we've heard over the past few weeks in Glasgow can seem somewhat depressing, but we in Moonee Valley can take some small actions where we can to reduce emissions. And our Green Action Plan, a report that previously went to Council, WAGA and other advocacy bodies agree that an effective way of moving off carbon intensive energy and onto clean energy is through rooftop solar. We have got a report coming back to us that will help inform how we best reduce community emissions and spend the bulk of the reserve. And this motion really puts some things in place while we wait for that report to come back so that we don't lose any more time in making use of the rooftops available. We, unfortunately, Moonee Valley is a little bit behind some of our neighbours, several of our neighbours, in installing solar panels. Wyndham and has installed almost double. I mean, they're a larger municipality, so it's not surprising, but it would, the competitive, I think we're all a bit competitive about a number of things, and installing solar panels to catch up with some of our neighbours would be an added bonus. There's every reason to do our little bit in Moonee Valley, and this motion just puts some steps in place, as I say, so that we don't lose any time in spending the reserve that we'd set aside at the budget time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sharp.
Can I just ask a point of clarification, please, to the CEO or from the CEO? Point C refers to the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve up to 50,000. Has it been, or can you confirm, please, that the $50,000 will be enough to do the capability audits, structural and capability audits on these 17 buildings?
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. CEO, I'm mindful that this was not in the original motion, but if you've got an answer to this.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Susan Mayor, probably need a director strategy and planning, because I am not sure whether we have done any due diligence on this. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. The $50,000 estimate is an estimate based on a cost of $2,000 to $3,000 per building, plus some additional time to produce and write reports. So it is a high-level estimate, not a tight estimate.
I think, was that high-level estimate, was it?
Sorry, I should take my... Is that better? Can you hear me now? Sorry. Yeah, it's quite a high-level estimate based on an approximate cost of $2,000 to $3,000 per building, and there would be additional work involved in negotiating with the lessees and report writing and the like. So it's a fairly loose estimate, but it's in the ballpark basically. But it is quite back of the envelope.
Thank you.
That answers your question, your point of clarification, Councillor Sharp. Do you want to continue speaking? No? Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sypek.
Well, Madam Mayor, where do I start with this one?
Don't know, Councillor Sypek.
I'm disappointed. $250,000 is not enough. I would have liked to have seen $1 million for this grant, because we have a lot of buildings. And a few years back, we got a federal government funding to put solar panels on 4 sports pavilions. I think $250,000 is not enough, but that's what we've got. I'm happy to support it, but I'm just disappointed we should have had more money in this grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No? Councillor Hodgson, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Isa and Councillor Sypek, for your enthusiasm. I think it's a really great place to start, and I commend Councillor Sypek's suggestion. I think maybe come budget time we'll raise that question again, but for now, an excellent point to start, and look forward to hopefully seeing more of this fund allocated in the coming months.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Now move on to 10.5 on the agenda, commencement of community notification process, outdoor trading in Puckle Street and Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with a slight amendment. Would you like me to read that in full?
Does it relate to all points or just certain points of the motion?
The ends of point D and point E, an additional point E.
So if points A, B and C aren't changed, if you just want to read points D and E in full if they're changed?
No worries. So point D to read, commence the community notification process, advising local traders, residents, commuters and broader community of the upcoming changes to traffic conditions, and receive an update on responses to feedback received. E, note the access to well-maintained service delivery lanes behind the retail properties is a priority for traders.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio, and can everybody see that on the screen okay? Thank you, and do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm hoping this is a motion we can all get excited about. This is a result of our council-endorsed position to go big and go bold in supporting our commercial precincts as they recover from what has been a very difficult past couple of years. After consultation with Council's Traffic Department, officers have proposed a temporary closure and activation of Puckle Street between Pratt Street and Shooter Street. The vision is to create a bright and dynamic centre square over the summer period that can be activated with live performances and entertainment, and facilitate an extension of outdoor dining and outdoor retail for businesses within the Puckle Street precinct. Aside from creating a destination that we hope will help our businesses thrive, it's a great opportunity to provide some much needed space for our community to come together and reconnect after what has been a truly difficult couple of years for our community. We're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. We've seen similar activations done in areas such as Yarraville in front of the Sun Theatre. We've spoken to, well, I personally, I know ward councillors have spoken to traders in relation to the proposal that was in the report, and just through some feedback, it was raised that we need to ensure that we maintain good access to the service delivery lanes, obviously for the retail businesses. If we're going to potentially, as the report says, close this section, a lot of those businesses use some of those car parks for loading for their goods, so as long as maintaining those rear service laneways so that they can access for stock loading. But also that councillors get some update on the feedbacks that's received from the businesses and from residents, so that we're aware of where the community sits with this. I'm conscious that this is a big change and maybe there might be some apprehension, but as we all resolved back in October when we got together for the special meeting to look at how we can support our businesses, sometimes we need to take these leaps to move forward and to try new things, and I'm truly excited. I think we're going to come up with something fantastic. Businesses are really keen to get involved as well. They're wanting to take part in this experience. They're wanting to get involved, and I've spoken to businesses who said, "Can I get an ice cream truck out there?" And I just think that's so exciting that people are really looking at this as an opportunity, because it is, and it's something that we can learn from as a council, and perhaps it's something that we can roll out in other places across the municipality. Maybe we can even look at doing something permanent like this in certain areas. I'm not saying do that here. But I know there might be perfect spots across the municipality, across the municipality that might be perfect for some form of more permanent activation. The great news is as well, the government's given us a fair chunk of money to do this. So this isn't necessarily coming from ratepayers. This is coming from the state in response to the pandemic and in response to outdoor activations. So I'm really excited, and I really hope my councillor colleagues support me here and support this motion. It's going to be it'll be a great outcome for the community, great outcome for business, and I really hope I'm there on opening night and can enjoy it with all you guys and enjoy some food, enjoy some music, and yeah, it should be fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Bedio, for moving this one. It is, I believe, a really great opportunity, and one that I think we hope will really enliven Puckle Street through the summer months. I note that, as with any of these, there will be troubleshooting, and through the consultation process, we do hope to pick up on people's concerns and how we might address them. But even once it's implemented, I think there will be things coming up, and I encourage anyone that's got issues to just get in touch, because we can maybe work through and find a solution. I also think that the activation of that area is really key to the success of this project. So we're looking forward to working closely with the traders in the area and with locals to make sure that we're actually using that space to its full potential to draw people to the area and really actually provide that additional foot traffic that we hope will support our businesses as they open up and hopefully have a really great summer of trading. Noting that the report does indicate that this road closure won't be implemented until after the Christmas period, so we're looking at sometime in the new year, probably for about 2 months, and we know that traditionally that's a quieter period for trade. So we hope that the activation will come at a really welcome time as well for traders, to try and really encourage people to get down and enjoy a COVID-safe summer down in Puckle Street.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and well done, ward councillors and those councillors that called the special meeting earlier this year to get this off the ground, because I think it's something that's needed. I obviously had the great privilege of representing Moonee ward for the 8 years prior to these three coming on board council, and constantly you would hear about Puckle Street, and I know sometimes it was exaggerated, but Puckle Street's dying or Puckle Street's quiet, everyone's going to High Point. And the reality is that shopping strips don't just come back to life without some sort of impetus, be it from levels of government, be it through traders associations, or be it through the local council. And I think Yarraville's that perfect example of something out at the Sun Theatre that was just a trial. It was 6 months, and the community loved it, and loved it so much that it stayed, and the traders have embraced it, the Sun Theatre's embraced it. We held our swimming presentation night at the Sun Theatre because the kids can watch a movie, the parents can have dinner, and then everyone can just mingle outside and wait to be picked up. And that was just a council idea, and some of them work in Maribyrnong down in Yarraville, and some definitely don't. But it needs that fresh idea. And as the councillors have said, there will be people who, even traders, who instantly think, how's this going to impact my shop? People aren't going to come, people aren't going to be able to park. That might be true, but if we're not being proactive, if we're not doing something that's going to encourage people to come to Puckle Street, to stay in Puckle Street, then in 8 years' time, the conversations are still going to be had. Puckle Street's dying. What are you doing about Puckle Street? So I think this is a fairly bold move. It's a brave move, but it's something that's well overdue. I did have a conversation with our esteemed former colleague, Councillor Serace, the other day, and she said, whatever you do not make Puckle Street one way. So I can call her up tomorrow and say, we didn't make it one way, we closed the whole thing. So I can tell you, Councillor Serace, I'm not going against your wishes here, because it's definitely not going one way, it's going 0 ways. Just temporarily, but you never know, it might stay forever. So definitely commend this motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. I'm sure Councillor Serace will love that shout out. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Just need to make sure you haven't set the cat among the pigeons there, Councillor Nation. It's not going to last forever, and it's not the whole street. It's a small section between Shooter and Pratt Streets, and it's a 2-month trial commencing after Christmas. I just want to be really clear that that's what we're voting on here. A couple of weekends ago, when we were looking at what to best do in Puckle Street, and we were considering various options, it was a sunny Saturday, and I sat in Puckle Street just watching what people and cars do in Puckle Street, and because I'm this kind of nerd, I was timing how often the pedestrian lights went in that little section near Pratt Street. And the pedestrian lights were activated more than once per minute. So that's how many pedestrians are crossing Puckle Street. And so I think that the value of this particular measure is that it creates that pedestrian through flow from the north to the south in the activity centre, which is what the traders have talked about. They want to get pedestrians moving north and south and east and west through the activity centre, and I think this could really help facilitate that. It will also create potentially, or hopefully it's our intent, is that it creates opportunities for pedestrians to linger, as Councillor Bettio and Councillor Hodgson have referred to. So I'm really optimistic about how this goes, and I might have to clarify that with former Councillor Serace tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Bettio mentioned, Sun City in Yarraville, I've been to that place many, many times, and that really was absolutely dead until they closed it off. And they took a leap of faith, and it's worked fantastically. Not only there, but we can also look at the city of Maribyrnong as well. Same place. City of Maribyrnong, they had a square just off Barclay Street, and it was dead. And when they closed the roads around it, it just absolutely blossomed like a cherry tree. So I think this is a great move, Councillor Bettio, great move. It's temporary. We're going to have a crack. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we've got other options to look at. And then maybe we can go to Councillor Serace's idea and just go two ways, or not one, or one way, whichever way we go. But I fully support this. It's new, it's exciting, but it's not temporary. So if anybody's against it, there's no problems, it's only temporary. But if it's a success, well, that's what happens, when you take a leap of faith. If the Romans didn't create the wheel, we'd still be pushing carts on logs. So they took a leap of faith. So let's take a leap of faith here, and let's see what we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Tyson, did your hand go up?
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks to Moonee Ward councillors for this. I know they've been agonising over every detail of it for a while, and I think Councillor Nation humbly didn't point out that he was in the media recently talking about this sort of thing, so I'll acknowledge him for that. I think it's exactly what we need to be doing post-COVID and into the COVID-safe summer, where I think there's a lot of pent-up desire for hospitality, getting out and about. Obviously, this is the coldest, wettest November that I've ever experienced, but hopefully December, January onwards is a bit better. One thing that I did just want to move a slight amendment, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Tyson.
So I'd like to just put an addition in point D.
Yes.
So I'll read the full thing out. Commence the community notification process advising local traders, residents, commuters, and the broader community of the upcoming changes to traffic conditions. Just adding the word the after and.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Can that be read as a ministerial change, or do I have to vote on that? Okay. The word the, I know it's incredibly important, so if you're moving the word the, I'll ask for a seconder for the. Councillor Bettio, Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak? Oh, sorry, apologies. Yes, Councillor Bettio moved the motion. So Councillor Isa, yes, can second it. Councillor Tyson.
Thanks, Mayor. So to some, this might seem a very minor change. To me, this is protecting and defending the English language. So the word the is about 7% of all written language in the English language. And councillors and colleagues know that this is a particular bugbear of mine, not having the word the. And I can see violent enthusiasm for my motion from the Mayor. But look, I'll leave it at that because I could talk about the word "the" all day. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this amendment? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Now, Councillor Tyson, would you like to continue speaking on this motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really pleased that colleagues have supported this really important amendment. But to the motion, look, it's going to be a really great summer. I'm really looking forward to it. And it'll be really interesting to see. I think it's a really live sort of experiment in human behaviour post-COVID and what's really important to people and how traffic is affected. You know, these are the sort of trials that we really like to see, and I'm sure our traffic engineers are going to love it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? No? In that case, I'll move to you, Councillor Tyson, as the mover of an amendment. No? And Councillor Bedio, would you like to close?
Thanks, Mayor. And in quoting you, Madam Mayor, from the special meeting, I believe you said, let's close a road. So here we are, and we may be closing a road. So I thank the officers for all the work they've done. I know we've put them under a lot of pressure and not much time to come up with some ideas for outdoor activations, and I really think they've done a wonderful job. I really hope councillor colleagues can support this. This is about creating a destination, and I think when we hear residents and traders being concerned about things such as parking, Parkville Street doesn't necessarily need to be about convenience. It needs to be about creating a destination and a hotspot that brings people to the area. Parking's always going to be an issue no matter where you go, but I think, and I really hope that traders are coming to us at the end of this trial period saying, please keep this is fantastic. And we never know, that might just be the case, but like you said, Councillor Sypek, we never know unless we try. So, I really hope you guys can support me on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. I will put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And now that debate's finished, I just want to add in that I'm extremely excited about this. I think that it is wonderful that we've got a council that is looking at doing something that's so progressive, and thank you to the officers for putting forward such an innovative idea. I'm sure we're all very excited to see how this all plays out. So we'll now move to item 10.6 on the agenda, which is the Financial Performance Report September 2021. Do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, and a seconder. Councillor Tyson. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak on the motion?
I will, thanks, Mayor. Council is required to receive quarterly financial performance reports in accordance with Section 97(1) of the Local Government Act 2020. This report is for the period 1st of July 2021 to 30 September 2021. In line with good governance, it forms part of the public accountability process and reporting, and includes the operating statement, the balance sheet, cash flow statement and capital expenditure. In the report, there is a table that summarises the financial performance for the September quarter. I'll just briefly explain some of the large year-to-date versus annual figures, as they're quite large variances, but nothing to be concerned about as they are timing issues. The accounting surplus year-to-date amount of $105.9 million is due to capturing 12 months of rate revenue, but only 3 months of expenditure. The annual forecast amount of $14 million reflects a full year of expenditure. The annual variance is due to increased operating grant funding of $3.7 million. That includes $2.1 million for Working for Victoria. Due to the ongoing impact of COVID-19, parking fines of $2.1 million and user fees of $2 million, revenue has been forecast down. Savings have been identified in employee benefits of $1.3 million due to positions affected by vacancies and COVID-19 lockdown. The cash and investments year-to-date amount of $59 million is due to a higher opening cash balance at the 1st of July than was budgeted, and also due to timing delays in operational expenditure as a result of COVID lockdowns. The annual variance is due to the increased cash position to budget at the beginning of the financial year of $5.2 million. The rates receivable year-to-date amount of $105 million is due to the generation of the annual rates in the month of August. This balance will reduce as ratepayers make their 4 instalment payments throughout the year. This explains also why the annual forecast amount will reduce to $11.9 million. With regard to capital works, the year-to-date variance is due to not including budgeted 2021 carried over amounts. This will be rectified in Q2 reporting. The revised budget of $59.2 million includes $12.1 million carried over from 2021. In conclusion, the finance report for the 3 months ended 30 September 2021 indicates that Council's overall financial position for the year ending 30 June 2022 is sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Tyson.
Thanks, Mayor. I think Councillor Adams said it really well, but it really is remarkable that after a once-in-a-century financial event, let alone a health event, we are very close from budgeted to actuals in variance. There's only a couple of metrics that are a little bit out, so I think it's pretty remarkable, and considering we don't know what's on the horizon in terms of the economy bouncing back, inflation, everything else, I think it's a really strong set of numbers. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Adams? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 10.7 on the agenda tonight is Climate Emergency Australia Joint Statement for Energy Efficient and Climate Resilient Homes via the National Construction Code. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson, and a seconder. Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, an opportunity was presented to us to sign on to a joint statement to support the piece of advocacy to the state and federal governments around increasing the minimum standard for new dwellings to 7 stars from the current mandated 6. This is about new homes being built and their energy ratings, and I'm really pleased to have this opportunity. I think it's really great. In an earlier debate, there was reference to some small changes that new builds can make to improve energy efficiency, and such as changing, colours of the building materials and things like that. And anything that can help us to encourage the community to build more energy efficient and sustainable homes is, in my books, a really worthy thing to support.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Just to thank officers for bringing this to councillors for consideration, and if there are other opportunities that are similar to this that enable us to advocate for these sorts of measures, I'd really welcome them. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? No. Councillor Hodgson? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Bedio. That motion is carried. Item 10.8 on the agenda tonight is recommendations for biannual grants round 1, 2021-2022. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. So this report, unfortunately, we can't speak too much to the detail of what is in the recommendation at the moment. These are the grants that were put together by a committee recently. It was really great to see councillors working with officers and our community members. It's often pretty thankless work, but it's incredibly critical. And I think it probably showed by the fact that the meeting was scheduled for 2 hours and went for 3.5. So I'm really looking forward to the recipients finding out about these grants and the great work that it's going to be doing in our community. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I just wanted to echo Councillor Tyson's comments. It's really exciting. We had really high calibre of applications in this grant round. The handful, I think there's about 9 that missed out on this round. I really do encourage you to take on board that feedback that you'll receive from the grants team and reapply for the next round. It's a really wonderful program. I think that the way it's been reviewed and its new implementation, this was the first time since we've made a few tweaks to the program, have been really advantageous for everyone involved. And I just finally want to thank those members of the community who sat on the grants committee with us for your work on that. There is a fair bit of work going through and assessing the applications, and it makes the grant program much stronger to have you involved, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to say that I'm really pleased that we are in a position to fund a total of nearly $150,000 worth of grants in this round. The Grant Advisory Committee worked really hard to assess each application, and it's really exciting news for the successful applicants. There are some ripper ideas in, and it's lovely to see the exciting ideas and initiatives from our community. I'd really like to also encourage the people or groups that have missed out in this round, who I know will be disappointed, to reapply in the next round. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any other councillor? Councillor Reiser.
The community grants are always a good chance to see the huge diversity of work that community members engage in with our community, and the sorts of social and other opportunities that organisations create for other people in our community. So thank you to everyone for applying for the grants. I just wanted to say that there were no grants that were unworthy of council support. It a matter of just prioritisation with the limitation of funding. So I do hope that those who were successful enjoy that success and are able to undertake those activities, and thank you and congratulations to you, and to those who missed out, please reapply in the next round. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Reiser. Any other councillor? No. Councillor Tyson, would you like to close? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Nation, Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Sypek. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Now, item 11 is notices of motion, but we don't have any tonight, so I'll move on to urgent business. Councillors, do you have any urgent business to discuss tonight? Councillor Nation. Councillor Nation, can you please advise what your urgent business is about?
Just give me one moment to find it, please. I just wanted to mention before we finished, happy birthday to Councillor Hodgson for last Sunday. That is my only bit of urgent business. Thank you.
You know what? That is very urgent. I'm not sure if we all want to break into song. Is that what you were? Is that the motion that you're moving, Councillor Nation? That we all move to sing? Did you want to lead it? Just wondering. No? No. Oh, okay. Sorry. just wanted to make sure. I'm not sure. That could have been a little bit of fun, but you know what, Councillor Hodgson, we might have a cupcake for you at the back. Councillors, any other items of urgent business? No? In that case, what are we up to? So we don't have any confidential reports for tonight. So therefore, we're up to closing the meeting. Thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. I hope you enjoyed some of the debate. I hope you're getting really excited about some of the things that we're moving in Council. And I hope to see everyone at Puckle Street in the closed off section when we get around to it in January. So good night. Thank you, councillors. The meeting is closed.